So last time I told the story of how a rule change regarding tyres, if you want to call it that, is how Ferrari salvaged its 2003 title hopes, and Schumacher went on to win the title by just 2 points over Kimi Räikkönen. Now, the year previous to 2003, Ferrari had swept through the championship. In 2003, however, they had a harder time of it. But in 2004, Ferrari went on a domination run again and just smashed every record in existence, and Schumacher won title number 7, a championship tally thought unmatchable, at least until 2020 that is. But around the world, not just in the UK, people were turning off their televisions. In fact, television audiences had dropped during 2004. Put simply, people were getting bored of the same guy winning nearly every race. Sound familiar? So the FIA needed to come up with something to help rein in the Michael while still improving the show. Again, sound familiar? So the FIA went into a meeting room, presumably in Paris, and started drawing up some new rules to make sure there wasn't a repeat of the dominant scene in 2002 and 2004. The first thing they looked at doing was taking away some of the downforce. The 2004 cars were the fastest they'd ever been. It wasn't until around 2017 or so that the records set by the likes of Schumacher, Alonso, Barrichello, Raikkonen and Montoya started to fall. I mean, even with grooved tyres, which were designed to cut the contact patch between the tyre and the road, well, they had their workarounds. In 2001, the FIA allowed traction control, so you've got tyres designed to reduce grip, but you're allowing a gadget that allows drivers to mash the throttle coming out of corners. Sounds a bit counterproductive if you ask me. And there was also the perceived issue that there wasn't enough overtaking going on track. And I say perceived because I've actually found the stats, and I'll put them on your screen for you. Now, just as a note, this does not include the opening lap of the race, it just counts lap 2 up until the checkered flag. So in 2000, there were 279 overtakes. In 2001, there was 230. 2002, 235. 2003, which was the exciting season, 303. And then in 2004, there was 287. And this is why I say perceived. There was a lack of overtaking, at least that's what the FIA was thinking, but the previous 2 seasons were up on the 2 previous. Unless they're thinking of overtakes for the lead. Might have been, because, you know, France, the mid-pack runners, right? But interestingly, looking at 2013 up until 2016, in 2013, 760, then 636, 509, and 866 in 2016. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to be saying right now. DRS, but even with non-DRS overtakes, that number is still pretty high, probably still more than what was happening in these so-called glory years. It must also be noted that in 2009 and 2014, the year that there were, major regulation changes, overtakes dropped. It's a bit of a digression, but, I found it interesting. I hope you do too. But each race in the 2004 season had an average of 16.2 overtakes per race, and the fans and the FIA thought that that wasn't enough, so they came up with ways they could try and fix this. So step 1, like I said, cut the amount of aero on tap. The 2004 cars were among the fastest ever created, at least over 1 lap. Montoya's average speed lap around Monza, which is like the outright qualifying lap record, whatever you want to call it, was still, top of the list until around 2017 or 2018 or so, when Kimi Räikkönen finally beat it. The teams have found workarounds for the grooved tyres, and dirty air was being talked about on broadcasts. In fact, dirty air was being talked about on TV in the 90s. So the FIA started to find ways to cut overall downforce by around 20%. The chief way they did this was mandate the front wings be placed higher than they were previously, and they also had higher noses to restrict airflow over the front wings and the rest of the car. But when quizzed about this by the motorsport media, the mechanics and the designers just went, yeah, we've managed to claw back about 15% of that 20% already. One of the more obvious things designed was at McLaren, where they came up with the devil horns to help feed air to the rear wing, which was now 50mm or 2 inches closer than before. As well as aero changes, they also told the teams that the V10 engines, now in their last years of service, Toro Rosso accepted of course, would now had to last 2 successive weekends. This was a cost-cutting measure as well as a speed-cutting measure. The theory behind it was that they now had to ration those engines over 2 race weekends. They couldn't just have one for qualifying, bin it, put a race spec engine in, and then bin that later on. Because privateer teams such as Jordan and Minardi were now under new ownership and were gone by the end of the season, the FIA was trying to figure out ways to keep the little man, the privateer guy, the garageista, still in the sport. Yeah, a lot of good that did. But the most controversial rule I can think of, in fact, most controversial rule I can think of ever, brought in for this season was the tyre rule. Tyres had to last qualifying and the race. Again, designed as a speed-cutting measure. Did you absolutely yeet it through the 2 qualifying sessions to get grid position and then just try and keep everybody behind in the race? Or did you sacrifice grid position for performance later on in the race? And the FIA was thinking this too. You know, if they sacrifice grid position for performance later on in the race, we might actually get some good racing. Oh yeah, it was an absolutely stupid rule. You were not allowed to change the tyres unless the FIA told you you could. Basically, because it had started raining. If you'd flat spotted the tyre, you're on your own. You did that, it's your fault. So because of this new rule, Michelin and Bridgestone had to design tyres that would last 300 kilometres as opposed to 80 or so, and you know, I wish I could offer up some sort of reasons and comparisons between the two, but Michelin just built better tyres that year. Although, when I was writing the script for this, yes, I know I do keep glancing at it to make sure I'm on track, I am working on it, Michelin did have an ace up their sleeve, a place where they could get data to build a fast yet still durable tyre. Le Mans. Michelin was supplying tyres to most of the grid at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2004, a place where tyres are often double, if not triple, stinted. And what that means is you put fuel in the tank, you put some tyres on, you drive around until the tank goes dry, you fill it back up, but you don't change tyres. You go around again, you pit, but you don't change tyres. It's not until the 3rd time of going around that you do change the tyres. It's thought that in some cases they can save you over a minute in pit stops. So using this experience, at least, you know, I'm assuming using this experience, Michelin was able to build a more durable and faster tyre than Bridgestone could. Bridgestone could not work out the optimal point between durability and outright pace. In addition, Ferrari couldn't work out the new rules as well as McLaren or Renault could, and while Schumacher got his car onto the front row in qualifying at Melbourne, he retired with hydraulic problems after about, 9 laps or so. Barrichello could only finish 9th, and he too had problems. Part of the problem was the engine and gearbox were too bulky for the car. Ferrari wanted to open up the diffuser but couldn't because of that engine and gearbox and couldn't produce enough downforce using the central part of the diffuser like everybody else was. The car's 2 most competitive outings, Indianapolis excluded of course, were at Imola and the Hungaroring. Now Schumacher could only qualify 13th at Imola because he made a mistake in the second part of the aggregate qualifying session. Yeah, that was also an absolute mare. But he was able to blitz through the field and actually challenge Alonso for the win in the latter stages of the race, producing one of the best endings to a Grand Prix for a long time. At Hungary, Schumacher was on pole by over a second and was lapping quite well against the Michelin runners. But on the day, Michelin was able to out-strategize Ferrari. Well, McLaren was able to out-strategize Ferrari and Kimi Raikkonen won the race. But apart from those 2 outings, and again Indianapolis excluded, there wasn't much chance of a Ferrari getting on the podium, let alone winning the race. I think it was like Schumacher was only on the podium 4 times that season, Barrichello was on the podium 3 times that season, and really it was Indianapolis and that absolute shit show that saved Ferrari's season. And it shows that the Michelins were better equipped for the racing in 2005 as Raikkonen and Alonso both put on a show at Suzuka that year. Raikkonen went from 20th to 1st, and Alonso put on that move on Michael Schumacher, sending it around the outside of 130R. For 2006, that stupid rule regarding tyres was dropped, and you could change tyres as well as refuel during the race again. I should have really pointed out that refueling was still allowed, so cars were coming in and they were just whacking fuel in and then just driving off again. It was like something out of Le Mans with double, triple stinting the tyres. But you know, in 2006, Ferrari was able to bounce back with the all-new V8 powered 248, but the Renault R26 driven by Alonso was still the superior car for the first sort of 3 or 4 races of the season. After San Marino, the 248 did bounce back, but an engine failure in Japan effectively handed the title to Alonso. But even though I'm not filing this video under opinion piece, what do you think about the 2005 rule changes? Was it really just to stop Ferrari and Michael Schumacher winning, or was it just a case of the FIA taking drugs in the boardroom again to get better racing? Leave any thoughts underneath this video in the designated comment leaving area. And while scrolling down, make sure this video is fed into the algorithm by liking the video, and if you're not already, subscribe and get the bell on so you never miss out on anything that I do here. Massive thank you, as always, to the good folk of Patreon for the continued support. And if you do want to help support the channel with image licensing for the F1 news reaction stuff I do, or just general upgrades to my computer, the software I'm using, and stuff like that to make these videos as good as they can be, you can help support the channel by heading to the link in the description, where there'll also be links to Twitter and to my Instagram. So with all that done, all that's left to say is that I've been Millward. Have a great day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.